Good morning, everyone. My name is Malcolm Young. I'm the Dean of Grace Cathedral. It's such a blessing to see all of you here today, and we're so grateful to have Garrison Keillor here. It is such an uncanny experience talking to him. I'm so used to hearing my little radio box talking, sounding like you. So it's actually nice to see the human being that's behind the radio box.
I can sit behind you, Malcolm.
Exactly, that sounds just like it, doesn't it? So this is the first forum of the fall year, and we every year have a theme. Our theme this year is the gift. Lewis Hyde is an idiosyncratic American writer who wrote a book called The Gift. It inspired us this year to have that be our theme. So we've been talking about the gifts that we have, the gifts that we share, the things that happen outside of the economy. And the next three focuses for us are going to be the gift of singing, which is what we're doing right now, the gift of story, and then the gift of generosity. So we think many ways that Garrison Keillor represents all those as a perfect match for that. It's been a gift to the American life, and we're very grateful to have you this morning. So thank you very much for being here.
I went to the University of Minnesota with Lewis Hyde. I knew him well. We worked on the literary magazine together. And he sent me a copy of The Gift, and I've never been able to read it. I just have not gotten very far into it.
You know, it is really weird. It's one of the most, it's a very strange book.
It is.
You know,
so I should try again.
I think you should give it another shot. I think you should. You know, Marcel Mauss is a anthropologist from France who wrote about gift economies like potlatch societies, etc. And Lewis Hyde's book is weird but worth trying it again, especially if you know him.
I'm 75, Malcolm.
Oh, yeah?
I'm 75 years old.
Yeah.
My time is running out.
I literally went through my bookstore yesterday. I was looking through these books and I was thinking, which ones am I going to get to before I die? And I guess that might be more, you might feel that more in a more pressing way.
If I had to choose between reading The Gift or going to Maui, I would go to Maui.
Right. Well, maybe what I'll do is I will write you a memo that has all the best parts of The Gift, and then it'll have page numbers that you can refer to and go to.
So I take it you finished reading the book.
Did. I read twice.
You read twice?
Otherwise, I wouldn't have had it be our thing this year. Yeah.
That's good.
So what was Lewis Hyde like when he was in college?
He was like all of us. He was trying to, appear eccentric and, brilliant and erratic and unpredictable. And, we were all trying to, be far above our own level. I've finally reached my level, and and I don't know what Lewis is up to. He lives in Cambridge.
He lives in Cambridge, Mass. Yeah, he does.
And
he seems like all those things still. I mean, maybe he was a more exaggerated version of it when he was younger.
Yeah.
You know, we sent our son off to college this year, and I was reading your essay about college. It said college is a time when a person can be gloriously, ridiculously full of oneself and get away with it.
Yeah.
But what advice do you have for kids who are going off to college? What thoughts would you have to share with someone who's just starting that adventure?
It may be your one chance to get deeply into something, and it may not even matter exactly what that is. Well, it does matter what it is, but it may be your one chance to get deeply into an intellectual pursuit, and whether it's mathematics, or whether it's the study of Old English, or whether it's reading Proust, or whatever it is, this is your chance, and you should not pass it up. You should not.
Yeah, I remember when people telling me about just what a wonderful thing it is to write a dissertation, that you do have a chance to explore a topic in a way that you may never have a chance to again in your life. Yeah. When you were growing up, I know that you spent a lot of time in libraries. What were some of the things that you were reading, and what kind of effect did that have on just your later life and your thought?
Well, I was reading about Minnesota, but I was reading Minnesota authors. Sinclair Lewis, I was very proud of him. And I loved Main Street and Babbitt and Dodsworth and Arrowsmith. I read all of his novels when I was in junior high, which is maybe just a little bit young for that, I was reading F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
And of course, like every other young man from the Midwest, I saw myself in his stories. I don't anymore, thank you. But
what changed? What changed? Why don't you see yourself in the stories anymore?
What changed? I grew up. I had a child.
Yeah. I was thinking that.
That changes everything, as you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of famous Minnesotans that we think of, and those are two of the probably the most prominent. There's also Walter Mondale, and was Judy Garland from Minnesota too?
No.
What,
no, he's the opposite of Minnesota.
Yeah.
He's from Southern California.
Yeah. So what are the famous Montanans like Prince and Bob Dylan and you and those writers? Is there something that you all share in common, or something that connects all of you besides Minnesota?
Well, I knew Bob Dylan just a little bit. He was in college with us and Lewis Hyde, and I know he showed me some of his stuff. I know him just very briefly in passing, because we used to hang out with the same people. Lay, lady, lay across my big brass bed. I tried to tell him should be lie, lady, lie.
That's great.
It's a transitive verb,
Right, exactly.
But Bob came from a solid middle-class Jewish family up in Hibbing, Minnesota. His dad was an appliance dealer, and he set out to make himself into a roughneck, and he still does that.
Yeah.
And he wanted to be like Woody Guthrie, but Woody Guthrie was not a roughneck either. He was a very well educated, self-educated person. So I was not in sympathy with that. I was from a small town. I knew plenty of roughneck people, and I didn't want to be one of them. Yeah. And I wanted to be cool. I'm over it now. I got over it when I was in my 30s somewhere.
Oh yeah. I wonder if I'm over wanting to be cool. I think I am too. Once you get ordained,
you look
that's
cool.
Just like it.
You look cool.
Well, thanks. I just thought as soon as you put on the clerical collar, you just give up all possibility of being cool.
No. You're so wrong. No, it's utterly cool.
Oh.
You just need to develop some contrary tendencies.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I'll take note.
Just read Graham Greene and you'll get some ideas.
Right. Whiskey priest, yeah. Maybe I just need to drink more whiskey. That might help me.
Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in your household when you were a kid? What were your parents like, and what was what were some of your first memories of just your family and life back then?
The first memory the clear memory of my family is that we were separate from the world. We were members of a fundamentalist sect called the Plymouth Brethren. And so we were apart from the world, and from the time you were a small child sitting in meeting, which we called it on Sunday, you were aware of this fact that there were those people out there, and then God had for some reason set us apart, and we were here to fulfill God's command in Scripture, which perfectly clear to everybody, and yet nobody else but us really understood it. So it was an interesting upbringing because there was a certain amount of pride involved, but also you found yourself living entirely within family. The Brethren Assembly, I was related to just about everybody there. Yeah. And so it was like your big family. And it was very warm, very loving family. But when you crossed a line, then you were out.
Yeah.
And this was made very, very clear. They were believed in the literal truth of Scripture, and which made them scholars, but scholarship made them schismatic, and now they're practically gone. You know, they hardly exist. But it was a powerful upbringing. My parents were quiet, hardworking people. They had 6 children. My dad was a carpenter. He worked for the post office, and there was no alcohol in the home at all. And so I don't remember any shouting or any extreme behavior or mood even. It was all very, very, very placid. So, you know, by the time I was 14, 15, and, you know, reading Sinclair Lewis and F. Scott Fitzgerald, I was ready for alcohol and whatever else.
Right, bring it on.
Yeah, bring it in.
You know, somewhere in an essay you wrote, you talk a little bit about Sundays just as the Sabbath, you know, as being really a time that's set aside for Sabbath-like activities. I wonder if that's had an effect on you as you are today. I mean, do you have a sense of Sabbath in your life? Or, I mean, it just seems almost un-American to observe the Sabbath nowadays. It's just we're so busy, but...
Yeah. I'm a right-winger when it comes to Sunday blue laws. I really am. I really think there should be a Sabbath in America, and I think that commercialism can only be controlled by the power of the state. But you know, that's a hopeless cause.
Yeah.
They now, I think, have legalized the sale of alcohol in Minnesota starting at noon.
Oh.
And
wow! So you still have it? You can't get it at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning.
I think there's still a law on the books. No, I love the Sabbath. When I was a kid, we were not allowed to play outdoors, and you could not toss a ball. That was relaxed a little bit, but now I really believe in the beauty of silence and the beauty of the family having its own day. As I say, it's a hopeless cause, and I'm not going to expend an ounce of energy fighting for it, but it's what I believe.
Right. I mean, in a way, churches have to make this decision too. Do you kind of go the way of mainstream culture and have video screens and have because people are so used to having that experience in all of their life, or do you try to create something that's kind of like antidote of that, of somewhere where there's silence, somewhere there's really face-to-face communication?
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, I do think it's a losing battle, but I think churches are trying to do something about it.
Underneath my progressive exterior hides a secret authoritarian.
Oh, that's great. Can you tell us a little bit how about your first experiences with radio? Like, how did you, go from this child who was reading Sinclair Lewis and F. Scott Fitzgerald? Did you know at that time that you wanted to be a writer, or what was your exposure to radio like? How did you first discover what it was that was going to be your call in life?
Well, it was accidental. It really is accidental. I wanted to be a writer, I think, from the time I was 13, and an English teacher named Frayne Anderson handed me a copy of A.J. Liebling's The Road Back to Paris. And reading Liebling, who was New Yorker, Jewish, agnostic, the opposite of myself. I didn't want to be him, but I loved his work, and I still do. I'm a big Liebling fan, and so that settled me on that. But there was no practical way to do that, and I had to put myself through school. I did that as a dishwasher, and then as a parking lot attendant. Neither of which seemed to be good, careers. And and then I got a job at the college radio station because I'd listened to radio, and I had some ear for imitating pretentious newscasters like Robert Trout and Gabriel Heater, and
it's a skill. That's a skill that they recognized in you early.
Yeah,
it's like having a really good curveball.
So the ability to be pretentious qualified me for public radio, and I just got right into it. It was the easiest work I ever found. To sit there and announce a classical music program was so much easier than dishwashing. And, that was the Mass in B minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. And you just put a little on the Bach, and
you get a bonus.
And the Leipzig Gewürztraminer, or whoever it was, and
That's great.
We turn now to the music of Poulenc and his Le Boeuf sur le Toit, and I could do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I remember when I was, in 4th or 5th grade, my parents gave me a radio, and listening to radio dramas, it just opened up a whole new world for me, because everything else that I experienced pretty much
You're too young
came
for
through
this.
them.
What are you talking about? There was no radio drama when you were a kid.
They did. They still had it. They still had like the shadow, who knows what lurks in the hearts of men, that kind of stuff. I liked
They
listening to
were
that.
playing cassette tapes.
Maybe they were playing cassette tapes. They were probably.
Yeah,
they were playing
were.
the cassette tapes over the radio.
No, you came long after that. That was
I
all.
did.
That was all over by the time you were.
Yeah.
You were just.
But at least they had the cassette tapes. Can you listen to it on the radio now? I mean, are there radio dramas on the radio now? Like what?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I tried, and I tried to revive it, and I did the Adventures of Guy Noir and the Cowboys and Dusty and Lefty and all of that. We had a good sound effects man and so forth. But the thing that I didn't get into in Prairie Home Companion was the thing that really grabbed me when I was a kid, which was horror.
Yeah.
I've never been able to bring myself to do horror.
Yeah.
Because I have children.
Right, exactly. And you realize what effect it has on them.
Yeah, and but there are scenes in radio drama in which Grandma and Gramps and Buddy and Sis are
and
hiding.
The chairs rocking on the thing and squeaking, and
they're in the summer cabin.
Right.
The monster is coming up the
exactly
the path,
the gravel path.
Crunch of the gravel.
Crunch.
And all you hear is this heavy breathing, and then the and you just lie there transfixed by it.
Exactly.
I loved it as a kid, but I couldn't bring myself to do it now.
Well, maybe it's gone. I mean, I don't even just think about the technology's changed so much. So how people hear radio is just so different. I mean, when you first started doing Writer's Almanac, I listened to it on the radio all the time, and then I realized, hey, I don't have to sit down at like 10 minutes to 12 every day and listen to this. I'll turn it on my computer, and so the podcast, so I can hear it anytime. I can listen to 4 of them in a row.
I'm a pre-podcast person. And,
you are definitely.
I'm way pre, and the idea of turning on a podcast just seems so alien to me.
Yeah. No, I can imagine.
I like
it's very
the
convenient.
randomness of radio. You get in your car. I never listen to the radio except in my car, and you turn on the radio and you roam around, and then there's something there. And it's happening right now, and it's it's amazing.
It is amazing. When you started a Prairie Home Companion, what was the most challenging, difficult thing about it? What were you really staying up nights thinking about when you were
everything? Everything was challenging about it. We started in complete naivete and ignorance, and there's no other way to start when you have no talent whatsoever, and you're just operating in the dark. You're operating on the basis of something you heard when you were a child, and you heard a local barn dance show called the Sunset Valley Barn Dance, and all these genial people.
Right.
And there was a little cowboy trio with an accordion, and there was an opera singer, and then there was a barbershop quartet, and there was all this byplay, and it was very friendly. And when you grow up Plymouth Brethren as a separatist, you have no social skills at all, zero, because you look on other people as sinners, and this does not encourage friendly conversation. So I put myself into a position where I had to learn how to be, if not charming, at least, appeal to people.
Right.
And this went against my nature, and it took a long time to develop.
You had to perfect
But I
and
thought it
hone.
should be done because public radio was becoming so canned and so overproduced, in my opinion, that it needed a live broadcast.
Right.
And so I did that for 42 years. And
writing the material
hang of it and
seems
quit.
like just like such a. I mean, how hard was it to write that much material all the time? I mean, was that difficult?
You just do it. That's
Yeah, you just
all.
do it.
It has to be done.
Yeah, and your
uh,
deadline is. Are you
and-
like sitting like I'm right when I'm writing sermons and it's 5 o'clock in the
right.
morning?
I mean, it has to be done.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I don't have to give a sermon today, or otherwise I'd be really worried.
Oh, for a second there, my first thought was, oh great, now I have to do the sermon. You had me going. You fooled me again. So the characters, like, where did the characters come from? The people who populated that world, and how did you get ideas for them? And where did they come from?
Well, the drama characters, Guy Noir, Private Eye, is a complete cliche.
Yeah.
And, out of them, sort of a combination of Sam Spade and I don't know who else, and the fat detective, who was that?
Yeah.
Nero Wolfe, of course.
Yeah, Nero Wolfe.
And the cowboys were stock cowboys, except they were not heroes. They were losers.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a reverse cowboy story. The people of Lake Wobegon came from my relatives, except I made them into Lutherans, and I didn't want to pick on the Brethren because
Right, they're already getting beaten down anyway.
the Brethren were fading so fast.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, so that's how they
Like
became.
shooting the wounded.
It is.
Yeah.
So I think I don't even know like what the statistics are, but I think a lot of people hear you every day through Writer's Almanac. And how did that come into being? I mean, it was 1993 that you first started broadcasting. Is that right?
It was just one of those really beautiful ideas that does not come out of meetings, does not come out of planning. It just pops out of your forehead.
Yeah.
And the idea was a 5-minute little blip.
Yeah.
There were no 5-minute blips in public radio, but I really love that length of time. And you can do a lot with 5 minutes, and it will mean more to people than if you just kind of spread it out to 15 or 30. And it would always include whose birthday, what happened on this day in history, and gradually as it evolved, I was paying more attention to people who had accomplished things rather than to historic tragedy.
Right.
I wanted to tell stories of people, men and women, who had done heroic things against the odds and who had made a contribution to humanity. So it became a kind of an inspirational show. I tried, not to have it sound that way, but that's what it was. And then a poem, and the poem had to be a poem that was immediately clear.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it had to be a narrative, but it had to be clear. People only have one chance to hear it, and they're busy doing other things, and other things going on in the background. And so you had to have a poem that did not blow smoke in people's faces at all. You could do odd things. You could do William Blake, you could do Emily Dickinson, but it had to be clear. I did a poem by my old teacher, James Wright, that was one of the most popular poems we did. Just off the highway to Rochester, Minnesota, twilight bound softly forth in the grass, and the eyes of those two Indian ponies darken with kindness. We step over the barbed wire, my friend and me, into the meadow where they have been grazing all day alone. It turns into a mystical poem, but you know where you are at the beginning. It's in a meadow. There are these two horses, and two men walking into the meadow. So you're placed, within it.
Well, and also it communicates a feeling too. I mean, and we do have that sense of when you meet a horse or a dog or a cat. I mean, of another being that's alien from you but connected to you. I mean, so that's part of it too. And I think about this a lot. I mean, the worst thing I think you can be as a preacher. I'm wrong a lot. But the worst thing you can be is just be so boring that you basically are communicating that the gospel is boring. And so I do think about Writer's Almanac because there's something that makes those little historical vignettes interesting, and there's something that the poem communicates. And I do think about, what makes something interesting. Do you ever think about that yourself?
I think about it all the time, and it's, it's the continuous question. I did... biography of William Faulkner, a great author who is not much read today. Young people claim they can't follow those long, twisting sentences and these complicated family relationships. So I feel like I have to do something in behalf of William Faulkner, who was tremendously productive within about 1929 to 37. I mean, he wrote 4 novels in there that are on almost everybody's list of the greatest American novels. Had a reputation as an alcoholic, which is really he was not entitled to. But what do you say about William Faulkner? The thing you don't say is this is a great American author and you really ought to read him. That's for your high school teacher to say.
Right.
So I said, William Faulkner was teaching at Charlottesville, Virginia, when John Kennedy invited him to dine at the White House with other Nobel Prize winners. And Mr. Faulkner said, "That's 100 miles away. That's an awful long way to go to eat." And he didn't go. And that's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, and that's the next kind of thing that people ask too is like, what makes something funny too?
Yeah,
I mean, so when you're funny, what is it that's happening? What's working? I mean, we all have to tell stories. We all tell stories all the time. So what advice do you have to give us in terms of just how do you make your story funny or interesting?
I'm more interested in the times when I try to be funny and I'm not
failed.
funny.
Yeah.
This is what is most interesting to me.
Yeah.
I can, blame it on the audience, but not really. The principle of comedy is if they don't laugh, it's not funny.
Right, and they're the ones who decide.
There is no higher recourse.
Exactly, you don't have a vote in it.
And you have to believe in this because it simplifies your life.
Yeah.
It just simplifies your life enormously. And I'm avoiding your question because I don't really know the answer.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's something, we're all allowed to do that, and it may be something that occurs to you in a couple days, too, I mean, your review of Mark Twain's autobiography, the book that couldn't be published for 100 years, until 100 years after his death, it's a good review, and I know they asked you to do it because they probably see you as the kind of Mark Twain of our time.
No.
Why do you think they asked you
Thank
to do
you,
it
but no.
But you know what I mean, though. There's a distinctive American voice. Mark Twain is kind of in your genealogy. Like, who else is like you in other generations? Who else is similar to you in the American scene?
You're asking me to write a term paper here, and
I know. I love term papers.
We just have a minute or two.
Yeah.
I left St. John the Baptist Episcopal Church in St. Paul because they got a new rector who felt that he had to start his homily on Sunday with a joke, and I couldn't bear it.
Right.
I could not bear it.
Yeah.
He seemed to think he was the host of a quiz show or something, and so I went over to St. Paul's on the Hill. Episcopal Church, about a mile from my house, nice walk on Sunday, and there was Father Mark was there, and Father Mark was a preacher, as I understand a preacher, and he came down out of the pulpit, and he came down into the congregation. And when he asked a rhetorical question, you weren't sure if it was rhetorical.
That's great.
He came right down and he spoke to us, and he spoke to us with great urgency and conviction, and that's what I expected.
Yeah.
If people compare the news of Lake Wobegon to a sermon, I don't know where they've been going to church, but no place I would want to go.
Yeah, they seem like pretty different worlds, you know.
It is.
So Scripture, I mean, what role has it played in your life? I mean, you've had, you know, all these decades to be thinking about these stories and what they mean, and what effect has it had on how you write, on how you think, how you live? You know, what has been the role of Scripture in your life?
Well, it has. If you're a writer and you grow up with the King James, that's all the Brethren believed in. You pick up some cadences from it, I'm sure, and you also pick up some words that are not particularly useful, like vouchsafe. But you pick up the precepts that you hold yourself responsible for the rest of your life. You know, what the Brethren believed is true, that you bring up a child in the way he shall go, and when he's old, he will be unable to depart from it, you know, much as he might wish to. And so you live for the rest of your life under the constant judgment of the elders of the Brethren as they interpreted Scripture. And of course, you know, you violate it all the time.
Right.
You're in continual violation.
Yeah.
I'm in violation here by speaking in a cathedral.
Right.
Huh?
But it's not a serious violation.
I'm going out of my way for you.
I know. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, even when you walked in the door, I mean, you know, we talked about overturning the tables of the money changers.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I mean, there's a way in the story and the content it has, you know, an effect on us too.
Yeah.
And even just the idea that the commercial world is something to be resisted. I mean, you know, when we're talking about Sabbath, I mean, that definitely comes from Scripture. That there's something higher than making money and selling things.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the church when you go around the country and you see different churches? I mean, what are you noticing about just religious life in America right now? I mean, what are you seeing just on the ground when you go on your tour and you're riding in that bus and you're in a different city each week? I mean, what are you noticing in the churches that you're visiting and seeing?
I don't visit churches when I'm on tour. I'm working every day and traveling at night and writing and so forth. But part of the show that I've been doing now the last 2 months is to walk out into the audience at the very beginning, which surprises them, and just humming a note, and then I start to sing "My Country 'Tis of Thee," and audiences are so different in their reaction to this. And it doesn't always correspond to parts of the country where you would expect there would be a high percentage of church people. But some people think that there's some kind of message about to come, or that this is political or something, but it's not. Other places, people find this so moving to sing a cappella in a group of people. They've never done this before.
Right.
And they sing beautifully for the most part. And so if they do well with "My Country 'Tis of Thee, Sweet Land of Liberty of Thee I Sing," then we might go on to the Purple Mountain Majesties, and we could go on, and if I sense that it's right, we go on to how great thou art, O Lord my God, when I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made. And we're outdoors, and we're under the stars, and there are 2,000 people, and to hear this hymn outdoors, people weep. They weep. I don't do this.
Yeah.
I'm not waving my hand. I'm not even singing very loud, and I'm not singing the melody. I'm singing a very discreet bass harmony part. And they are so moved by this. When peace like a river attendeth my way, and sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. They feel this powerful emotion of being one with other people.
Yeah.
And this is something that people really need in this country.
Yeah.
I would stand up without a hesitation. I would stand up, next to people from the National Rifle Association. I would stand up with Congressman Steve King from Iowa. I would stand up next to Rupert Murdoch if he knew the words. And sing My Country 'Tis of Thee. I would do it happily. I really would. I think it's the same in church. That hymns are so crucial, and they really bring people emotionally together, which is where we belong.
Yeah, exactly.
Where we belong.
It is, and you're right. I mean, and part of it is we have such a spectator experience. Like if I started singing along at the San Francisco Opera, you can bet that people would be pretty irritated with me.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like the church experience it's something that's, it's almost like you have to give people permission. I mean, that's why we've been, the gift of singing is our focus for this month. And we had a sermon from our music director on last Sunday, and it was really powerful. At the end of the sermon, he had the entire choir go out in the midst of the entire congregation and singing Old 100th. Praise God from, and there we all were singing together in this beautiful harmony. And you're right, it does bring us together.
But the person you really need to lead the people is somebody mediocre like myself.
You're right, because it gives them permission to sing.
Yeah,
You're totally right.
Right, exactly.
That's exactly right. The more mistakes that you and I make when we're in that setting, the better it is. Because they're like, oh, Malcolm can't sing this either, and I can do it. You're exactly right.
The problem with most church music directors is that they're gifted.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's exactly right. They are.
Is this being recorded?
In more ways than one. I hope not. I mean, yeah, I do look at the political scene these days, and Jesse the Body Ventura was the governor of Minnesota, and I wonder what we might learn from the period of time when he was governor, and as we have Donald Trump as our president. Do you have any suggestions for what that was like? We weren't paying close attention to what was going on in Minnesota then, and maybe you can bring our minds back to it, so that we might learn something for how to be in this new time.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jesse Ventura did no lasting damage to Minnesota.
Well, that's a good way to start.
People might have been embarrassed by him. I don't know. People enjoyed making fun of him. That's all fair. But I think that he was dissatisfied with both the Republican and the DFL candidates, and that's why he ran. And that's not a bad position to start from.
Right.
But he also did not want to make a fool of himself. And when he was elected, to his great surprise, 37% of the vote, he actually did a pretty good job, I think most people would agree, in his appointments of commissioners, and that's where the real damage can be done.
Right.
Is down at a lower level, in state departments, and where you frustrate the bureaucracy, and you create chaos, and you try to impose your own political biases on the ordinary operations of government involving money and state aid and so forth. And it doesn't harm anything for the governor to be out there performing and to be tossing off ill-considered wisecracks and so forth. And he did a lot of that, but it's harmless. It's harmless.
Right.
We can, the country is a lot stronger than what journalists may give us credit for.
Right, right.
Journalists are making, I speak as a columnist, journalists are getting way too much mileage out of this administration because it's irresistible.
Right, right,
It's irresistible.
Well, it's hard not to, yeah, exactly.
Right. And he is such a caricature, and he's so easy to write about. But country's in pretty good shape.
And we're resilient.
We really are.
Yeah. So truth. I mean, we are in conversation right now about what our theme for the cathedral next year will be. So we're talking about maybe having a theme be the truth, and talking about truth, in the history of California, and fake news, alternative facts, those kinds of things. How do you feel about just that conversation that's going on in the country right now about the reliability of the news that we hear, and in the stories that we use to make our judgments on things?
I think this is a very temporary phenomenon.
Yeah.
I think it's a very passing phenomenon. I think that there are deeper issues, and so I would argue against it, But I'm 75, and so my point of view is different from other people.
Yeah, but still, you're hearing from people, and you're part of a conversation that's a big conversation.
Yeah.
So, what do you think some of the deeper issues are that we're facing right now? What do you, if you had to name your top 5 main issues that the United States is facing, what would they be?
Well, I think that for all of the benefits and the blessings that have fallen on America and our people and all, I think that we are not as happy as we ought to be. And I doubt that any ambitious forum program is going to take up the issue of happiness, but it's an issue to me, and where people are looking for it. I think the media don't reflect America, but then they never have.
Right, right.
And so people have to find this on their own. Like any other 75-year-old person, I worry about my grandchildren,
yeah.
and what will be left for them. I worry about the internet, like everybody over the age of 60.
Right, right.
It's brought the best and worst of the country into your own home, and it makes me feel grateful for growing up in a Brethren household where you really had the benefit of quiet.
Right, right.
And you didn't have to contend with everything, in the world, everything sexual and violent and paranoid and all the rest when you were 10 years old.
Right, right.
You lived in this cocoon with your parents and your siblings and a few neighbors, and so I feel a little nostalgic for that world.
Yeah, I do too. There's something called the Greater Good Institute in Berkeley, where they have these psychologists that study happiness, and for them, gratitude is a really big part of happiness. That this sense that we're receiving something that we don't deserve, so it's almost like a kind of a state of mind that you're right. The internet and just the rat race of just trying to get a job and being able to pay your rent in San Francisco, those distract us from that happiness. One of our big traditions at the forum is we take questions from people, and so I'd love to be able to take some questions if that would be all right with you.
Of course, I can't imagine what questions they would have, but sure.
That's the wonderful thing. They're brilliant questions. So Rebecca Nessel has a microphone for us. I hope there's some good Lake Wobegon questions, because that's the ones I didn't ask.
Gosh, I'm the first. This is scary. 2 points. What you just said about happiness. I live abroad, and people just think Americans are so lucky. And the one thing that they are sad about is that they feel maybe they have relied on America too much in the past for support, but they miss it. So I like what you said about happiness, because we should be so grateful in this country. Second, BBC4 has a lot of, you talked about the radio drama. People listen to it all the time. I mean, there's something that's going for 35 years over there, Book at Bedtime. Why is it over there different from here? I mean, this is England. So, you know, we're a very educated country and so forth, but I liked what you said about you don't like podcasts. I can't do them either. But why would England be so different from here with the radio, which is really alive and well in England?
They will soon be more and more like us. The internet. The internet is a powerful force. And when we come to San Francisco, we, from Minnesota, we're looking at a lot of people who are responsible for it.
There's a question that someone asked on the card. What's going on in Lake Wobegon lately?
Well, I was there. I was there for the funeral of an old girlfriend, which was very moving, and you never get over these things. She and I were 17, and we had some remarkable, beautiful, erotic encounters that remain very vivid in my mind. I doubt that they remain vivid in hers, but you know, I come from a Brethren background, so the first time that you cross over that line is a permanent memory to you. I'd like to write about her, I really would. And now that she's dead, I guess I can. It was a small funeral, and because she'd been gone for so long, and the pastor in the Lutheran church did a wonderful job talking about community service and kind of staying away from the gospel, because she had really never been a believer and never pretended to be. And it makes you appreciate the church, which is offering this beautiful service, and you know, for somebody who was not really part of us, and welcoming them in, at least after they're dead, you know, and giving the family what it wants, some comfort. We sang "Abide with Me," "Fast Falls the Eventide," and we sang "Children of the Heavenly Father, safely in His bosom gather." Nothing too, you know, evangelistic, right? It was good.
That was good.
Hello. You've had a very remarkable career, and I think we're all so
Unlikely.
very appreciative that you're here. Could you share some of your special moments from doing radio all those years?
My special moments would include moments when I dropped a microphone on the floor, and so in several million homes around America, people dropped something. They leaped up from their chairs. Cars veered off onto the shoulder. Those are the things that I remember. I do not remember a single moment that I can think of offhand of feeling triumph or accomplishment, or, well, I did enjoy singing duets with women. I felt that, you know, as long as I kept my harmony part, you know, kind of subdued, then we were okay. I enjoyed that, especially with tall women. But all I remember are embarrassing moments. I once, inventing the news from Lake Wobegon, I once had a man try to get a cow up the stairs in the house, and she broke a leg and he had to shoot her. And the moment I had that gun go off, I knew I had done something terribly wrong, and that I had terrorized thousands of people. I only remember my mistakes. Sorry. I never saw rays of sunshine come through the window, you know. It always was a struggle.
While Rebecca's going to the next person, would you please define joshing? That's one of the questions.
Joshing is teasing, I think. And I'm not sure if it comes from a humorist named Josh Billings. He was one of those sophisticated comedians who pretended to be unsophisticated, and so he employed bad grammar and mispronunciation, but it just means teasing. I don't think it really means satirizing. I wouldn't take it that far. We are a teasing people. I grew up with teasing. I think they're trying to discourage it now, aren't they?
Well, joshing's different. I think you're right. But we have another question out here.
Hi there. I grew up through my parents with you, and Lake Wobegon and Prairie Home Companions, and I was very interested in what you said about happiness, and I was actually listening to NPR while driving, and I was listening to this gentleman who was talking about imagination being the fulfillment of happiness, and the internet being the fulfillment of reward, and reward is dopamine, and happiness is serotonin, and so on and so forth. But what was interesting to me is when you were speaking about that, is that popped in my mind, that imagination, and that's what your radio shows would do for me. I would sit there laying on the bed listening to Guy Noir and being very interested in your sounds effect guy and your Lake Wobegon stories, and I would make up the images in my head, ice fishing stories, the yellow Chevy that your aunt used to drive, and all that. And then Radio Days came out, and I actually saw that, and it was the images were kind of put there for me, so my imagination wasn't quite there. And I was just wondering, how did you feel about making Radio Day? Was that was obviously you had to stop and retake and do things like that because it's a movie. Was that different for you, and how you would do your radio shows?
Well, I don't look on radio or entertainment as a primary source of happiness. So to me, it's a little off center. I mean, I think that there are times when you're driving a car, or you know, some people when they, you know, take their half-hour brisk walk. I mean, they need something in their ear, and so I'm happy to provide that. I always thought of radio as a medium for shut-ins and the elderly, and evidently not from the looks of you, but no, I think of another kind of happiness, and the people I worried about are people who I happen to agree with politically, and who I feel allied with politically, which, you know, generally people you know, left of center, and to me they seem so anxious and so unhappy. Democrats in Minnesota just they just seem perpetually on the verge of collapse. You know, worrying about. I mean, there are 100 things to worry about, and every single day of the week the New York Times or the Washington Post or somebody gives us one new thing, not to worry about. And now, we were worried about, we're worried about food yesterday, and now we're worried about, a decline in men's testosterone, and then, tomorrow there'll be something else, and now we've got to be concerned about that. Life is good.
Yeah.
Life is good. It is.
Yeah.
And I when I find myself among my fellow DFLers in Minnesota, it's grim. Why? Why does it have to be that way? Why do we have to, when we meet and sit around a table, why do we have to talk about him? I don't get that. Let him be. He is who he is, and we're not going to change that here, sitting in my backyard in St. Paul, Minnesota. Meanwhile, we have children who are much more interesting, and we have our own stories, and our children deserve to hear our stories, and not to be besieged by political anxiety. No, I feel bad about that.
Yeah.
And now here I've made myself feel bad.
You started out fine.
Enough.
Well, what counsel do you have for other writers about creating, enjoying, or surviving the writer's eye?
The writer's
life. Writer's life.
Oh, the writer's life.
They didn't dot their I.
The writer's life is a good life. It's a life that you can pursue entirely on your own without permission from anybody else. And you are entirely free. It's a life of adventure and enterprise, and you just have to keep from becoming too self-conscious. And my recommendation is that whenever you need to go to work in the morning, assuming you have another job, you do as my friend Kay Ryan out here in Marin did. She taught English to kids who were having problems in college, and she had to be at work at 9 o'clock, and so she got up at 4 o'clock, and she wrote her poems from 4 until 7:30, and then she went to work, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It would help if you don't. Drink too much wine the night before, but it's a beautiful life, and you can carry it on until you're 75, and I hope 76 and 77. Other things will come by accident. Publication may come by accident. A successful commercial book, may come by accident, but don't worry about it. Just worry about what you're doing every day, a little bit more.
Do you go through phases, like in terms of you can look back at the work that you did and said, I can look back and say, I was reading Paul Tillich's Systematic Theology during that time, and so I preached in that kind of way in 2002 to 2007. Are there periods in your life, or is it just all pretty much the same thing in terms of your writing and your creativity?
It's you never look back. You try not to look back. You have to go on in the faith that your best work is yet to be done, even though you know it's not true. And but you go on in hope and ignorance, the two of them combined. And no, I would never go back and reread a book of mine. I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's funny because for us, because we have the 3-year cycle of readings, it means that you are conscious of what you did 3 years ago, and 3 years before that, and 3 years before that. But you're right; I can't imagine reading a book again that I wrote.
No.
So we have another person gave me this question. Do you have a favorite parable of Jesus? This was not
the
my
prodigal
question.
son, of course.
The parable son.
The prodigal son, not the parable son, the terrible son.
Yeah, that's my favorite too.
Yeah, the prodigal son. I mean, there it is. It's the story of my life, and whoever else's.
Well, it's funny. So you put yourself in the son's place right away.
Yeah. But did he ever forgive himself? Is the question that is left unanswered. I mean, you know, he caused the resentment of his older, faithful, better brother. But did he ever forgive himself? I'm not sure. It's a problem that, you know, the Christians have, is whether we can accept forgiveness.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I like about it is just that the father will do any silly thing because he loves that son so much. I mean, running through the fields with his robes all, you know, a kilter, and he doesn't care about how any else perceives what he's doing. He loves that son so much.
This would be a good sermon topic.
I
for
know,
you.
really. I can't remember when it comes up in the readings.
Oh, does it come up?
Somewhere it does.
Oh, the prodigal son.
Prodigal son. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess in the year of Luke. So
There must be other passages, though, that have to do with
we've got 2 more years.
self-forgiveness.
Yeah, there are. Not all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Paul, I mean, it felt like he'd done terrible things. I mean,
Yeah.
and so he felt whatever he did. It kind of goes back and forth between bragging and feeling like he's done terrible things.
And maybe a personal story would help in this.
Or a joke.
Huh?
Or a joke. We're so glad to see you. We're going to stop now, unless you have any more. Like, do you have a vision of the future that you want to share with us before?
A vision of the future.
A vision of the future.
Good
Prophetic
Lord.
vision of the future right now.
I am in San Francisco, aren't I?
Yeah.
You give me the mushrooms,
I'll give you the vision.
No. When you get to be 75 and you have much less future. There are just a few things that you wish for. I've got two grandsons, and I'm focused on them. I have a 19-year-old daughter. I'm focused on her, and as long as I keep taking my blood thinners, and,
Right.
and I still have the power of speech, I'll be okay. It's the kids. It's their world, and I wish them well.
Yeah. Well, great. We're so grateful to have you today. Garrison Keillor will be preaching at the 11 o'clock service, and if he doesn't have a sermon, then I'll be preaching in his place about the prodigal son. Next week, as our guest, we'll be having Margaret Miles. She was the first woman tenured at Harvard Divinity School, and the author of, she's a historian, she's an expert on St. Augustine. She's an extraordinary person. She's probably one of the most influential teachers I've had in my life, so I'm really looking forward to seeing her. I hope you can join us. And then please join us for the 11 o'clock service. Garrison Keillor will be preaching. And then immediately after, we're having a huge party on the cathedral close, and you're welcome to come join us for that. We even have a bouncy house, which last year everybody went home, and I saw that the bouncy house was completely unoccupied. So I decided to go in there and get a few bounces in, and of course somebody with a cell phone camera came along. It's very embarrassing. But let's show our appreciation for Garrison Keillor.